Hawaiian Islands, coming from the perspective of complete freedom, coming from wisdom outside the system, and then some. This is the mouthpiece of the natural earth forgotten. At this point in time, humanity's been kept from the truth, so Chant It Down Radio offers the coordinates to a path out.
You're searching for something whole, cause what you seek real life. You're watching this world unfold, the truth beneath the lies. Rekindling what's been stole, the need to free one's mind. Uncover the truth exposed, so people see the light. Let's chant it down, so we can know. It's simple, we just break it down a little bit so we can process all. Make the switch to elevate yourself to conscious mode, and it's beneficial we can get this concept rolling. Get the future generations wanna stop the whole thing. With the message demonstrated, we can start a post. Taking in, assimilating, getting lots of numbers. Waking up the population, try to stop hypnosis.
We're going to go on pure conjecture here on those things. You know, what if they want to rid the population to have the others live in this world? I've thought about that. You know, maybe there's not room for the others. You know, maybe it's what they require. And maybe it's happened before in history. Is that why they think the world's overpopulated? It's not because of climate change, something that they made up, by the way. All the planets are changing in the solar system, you know, and they crammed everyone up in these cities anyway, right? They change the climate daily with their spray programs anyway. So we really have, you know, that's a whole nother subject. But why do they think the world really is overpopulated? I mean, yes, the way we live uses lots of resources. Yes, we are not living sustainably, and yes, some wildlife is really dying, endangered species, because of us and because of the way we live. Sure, that is happening, and definitely. But if these people are so powerful, and we know that they are working with way more sophisticated technology than they're letting on, then why not give free energy? Why not grow mass amounts of food? There could be way better ways of keeping everybody on this planet and living differently and allowing people to, you know, see their point of view instead of having a politicized thing. You know, why not quit thinking about the dollar and think of the welfare of human beings and the animals and the plants on this planet? And because they don't want to lose their power hold, it would change the power differential, so that's why. So they're not going to give that up. That's for sure. So they just want us all to die off. But why? So that there's big things that could happen. And one of the biggest things that could possibly happen is disclosure. But disclosure is one thing. You know, they could say, yeah, we've been working with these Greys or these blonde Nordics or these reptilians or whatever, you know. You know, they could say that and admitting to us that they have been using their technology and, you know, created bases on the moon and Mars and places like that. And they created a secret space program, etc. You know, which, by the way, they will never admit to us, or maybe they will if after everyone has died off from this scene, possibly. But who knows? I really doubt it, though. I really doubt it. You know. But let's say that's not the biggest thing that they could do, or that's not the biggest thing that could happen, put it that way. A bigger thing that could be done is the Anunnaki, or gods with a little g, from the Sumerian tablets and the many worldwide ancient stories, return back to Earth. And possibly pose as our creators. You know, it's been said before by people like L.A. Marzulli. Look into his work. He comes from a Christian background, which ties in nicely to the end times of today, so you can look at it like that. And these could even be other species posing as Anunnaki too. The elites could put in like, oh, well, these are our creators when they're really not. Or they're not even really the Anunnaki either. Because if they disclose anything such as blonde Nordic peoples or whatever that you know, these people that are, you know, cited by some people, the public will believe it. I mean, the public will believe just about anything that they say, you know, especially a shocking event like that. You know, and then maybe again, these Anunnakis, the real ones, maybe they're not even on the elite side and they know that their time is limited due to their return. And that's something too. So these gods of old, gods because they live longer than humans, gods with a little g, because they had advanced technology, and they were way more advanced than any humans. These gods of old can kind of be linked into one species, but then again could be many entities or factions too. And we still don't even know what the Anunnaki look like. It was forbidden to draw or portray them, so it was forbidden to accurately describe them. Some say they were red, bearded, Caucasian giants. You hear about the six-finger, six-toed giants. Some say bearded, cloaked people, like the you hear about in South America and stuff like that. Some say elongated skulls, as the fossils have been found, with no suture lines, the ones that are obviously not cradle-boarded, right? Or are they giants? Do they have scaly skin that looks like feathers? I mean, there's so many ways to go with that, and we don't know. I don't know. I would say that they were humanoid looking, and not. I'm not one to believe that they are the same as the reptilians, but who knows exactly? Because I believe we live in a diverse, populated universe, and it's multidimensional, and so there's a lot that we just don't know. Because again, normal life is not going to show or talk about any of this stuff. So yes, it sounds outrageous and crazy, but that's because through all the normal facets of society, you're not going to get this information. And just hearing it come out of my mouth, I feel like I'm a little crazy, but honestly, you just got to look into this stuff. These Anunnaki could easily and most likely be the same gods of Egypt, and the same ones who created advanced civilization, that created megalithic sites all over the earth. I think, in my own research, that Earth was populated by a different species of human before the flood, and these were probably hybrids. Maybe there was regular humans around too. I'm not really sure, but these were probably the fallen angels, or the giants, or the Nephilim, or the Elohim. But that most likely the Nephilim were the hybrids. And these Anunnaki were not divine. They came as manipulators of DNA. They came as disruptors of the natural balance of the earth. They were interfering. They interfered. And so they are not creator godlike. They do not come from divinity. And of course, the common myth of archaeology too. We have to, and then you look at all the sophisticated megalithic sites and things like that. You look at that, and it's obviously way more sophisticated. And we were like, how could humans build those? We can't even build a lot of those today. And there's that common myth in archaeology, history, and science, is that the farther you go back in history, the more primitive and less sophisticated humans were. And that's a big lie. And I think what we are seeing is, in these primitive times, is humans coming out of civilizations that had been destroyed and starting over, basically resets. And it's these periods that cause us to be more primitive, and then we build up and build up. The elites are always surviving these cataclysms and things like that, and then they decide to, rule over society again, and then it gets too big, and what happens? But as a side note, just to say, there are those tribes that were primitive, very few now, but the primitive hunter-gatherers through all these time periods, those that were either isolated or just didn't want to belong to civilizations, the smart ones. They didn't want to be slaves, but that's different, and perhaps their DNA is different from those in civilization. I mean, what do we know, really? So, but to get back on track, when you look at these megalithic sites and civilizations like Sumer, Egypt, Babylon, Stonehenge, Baalbek, Lebanon, or Pumapunku in Bolivia, or Teotihuacan, and many others, right? They were very advanced and sophisticated. They may not these civilizations or whatever they were, they may not have had cars and smartphones, but we don't really know what they had. Because in 5,000 years, will there be anything left of cars and smartphones to dig up? I don't think so. And a lot of these sites, I think, are much older than 5,000 years. We're just looking at, the remnants of huge things that were here. They had knowledge. These civilizations, these people had knowledge of how energy and ley lines worked, and that's why they created stone circles, and they created things over vortexes. So they knew this, and primitive peoples would not know this. So this was not an earth people, whatever this was. And I mentioned fallen angels, and you have to really think what a fallen angel would be to someone who had never seen this before or didn't know any other way to describe it in order to write it on stone. And to think that if it was important enough to be etched in stone or clay, then it must have been pretty damn important. Most people didn't know how to write in these old civilizations, so we think anyway, at least going on the vein of most people were primitive, but then again, that's a lie anyway, so what do we know? So only if it was really important would it need to be written in stone and clay and stuff like this. And if an angel is something that flies and it falls, I would assume, just thinking about it logically, it would be a flying something that crashed. It would, it could be in the spirit realm, and I won't say that for certain that it's not. Sometimes I think other dimensions were mistaken and still are mistaken as the spirit realm, but something crashed. But then there's another way of looking at it too. James Gilliand of Isetti Ranch, which I've been to before as a UFO hotspot, claims that the fallen Anunnaki are those like Enki and Enlil, and that the real Anunnaki want to come save this planet, which very well could be, and hold on to that for later. But so we have to think though, these ones mentioned in the Sumerian clay tablets were not obviously divine. They fought amongst each other too, and this was just they could have been the fallen ones. But so it's quite obvious that the first 5 books of the Bible are just echoes of larger, more detailed stories that came from older Sumerian, Akkadian, and Babylonian texts. And you can plainly compare all of it and realize that these are shortened versions that were put in the Bible. And we talked about that when I had on the guest Paul Wallace. And also, these things can be complemented with ancient Indus Valley texts such as the Mahabharata and the Bhagavad Gita, and probably Chinese texts that I know nothing about. But these stories are all, Earth's real history that nobody talks about. But what's important out of all this today, it's easy for me to go on many tangents here, so sorry about that, but many of these texts say they will return, as well as many researchers like Zacharias Sitchin, like him or dismiss his interpretations, claims that the Anunnaki will return, whether you believe in planet Nibiru or not. But even a Pentagon insider claims, and his name was Stan Deo, I don't know I don't know if this is true, but he claims that he's heard that the Anunnaki are coming back. And I don't know what to believe about, either of those, But just as a side note, there was a giant pyramid UFO above the Pentagon on December 18th of 2018. And the same thing was spotted years earlier in 2009 over Russia's Kremlin. Just interesting to know. If you've never seen those videos, look them up. And that makes you wonder, if that was them as well. But who knows? But back on track. The Egyptian believed they would return. The pharaohs, they believed that they would come back. Viracocha, the gods in South America that supposedly built Machu Picchu and Sacsayhuaman and many sites like that, said they would return. Kukulkan and Quetzalcoatl all said that they would return. And the description of many of these gods were all the same, pretty much, just coming from different witnesses who described them differently from points of view, but they were all basically the same. And they obviously left because at least they left our current civilization. Maybe they went underground, we don't know. But we do know that they obviously left because these megalithic sites got worse and worse. They were cheaply imitated since. In other words, if you go to these sites or just even look at them online, you'll see where they tried to add on to sites like Machu Picchu and Sacsayhuaman, for example, I've been to, where like they'll have the huge megalithic stones, and then they'll have these cheap imitation small stones on the top, which, we could definitely do today. But we can't replicate this big megalithic stuff today. But many believe that these elites who run our planet have been put in charge because they are of this royal bloodline connected to the ancients. They were the hybrids, most likely carry a bloodline to the gods with a little g. And that's why they think they have the right to rule. I mean, that would make sense because they were put in charge and they think, well, if the world is overpopulated, then they have the right to make it less populated. And that's why they consider us different than us regular people and even inbreed in a bit just to keep these royal bloodlines intact. That would make sense, because they think they're like a different species than us. Even the Hawaiians, the elites, the royals, were known to do the same thing because they consider themselves to be different than the commoners. So it goes all over cultures because they were related to the demigods, or they are the demigods, half man, half god, or some percentage of. And then we have this race of people, us, that were genetically modified to be slave species to mine gold. And this has been confirmed by Zulu tribes in South Africa, and the ancient gold mines and ruins uncovered by Michael Tellinger and Adam's Calendar. Really important stuff to look into. Awesome. I've really been getting into that. But some say our DNA was limited by the Anunnaki in order to keep us living in subservience, control, and conformity. Due to mass censorship, if you want to listen to this entire podcast, go to any podcast player out there and visit the website chantitdownradio.com, which has many episodes and archives to sift through.